The water exploded like a bomb had detonated. Glass shattered. Metal groaned. And as the black sedan sank into the deep end of the Riverside Country Club pool, Rebecca Martinez realized her life had just changed forever. At one moment, she was screaming at her neighbors about their late-night party. The next, she was staring at brake lights disappearing beneath chlorinated water, and the person inside wasn't moving. What started as a noise complaint was about to become something far more deadly. The bass line thumped through Rebecca Martinez's bedroom wall like a heartbeat from hell. Her bones, her skull, her last nerve. The red digital clock on her nightstand glowed to 47 a.m. "That's it," she whispered, throwing off her covers. "I'm done." Rebecca had endured 3 months of this, that started at midnight and ended at dawn. 3 months of her asking nicely, then firmly, then desperately for them to show some consideration. She was a single mother working 2 jobs. Emma, her 8-year-old daughter, had school in the morning, suddenly cranked louder. Voices erupted in drunken laughter. Someone shouted about jumping in the pool. The Riverside Country Club, backing up to their modest neighborhood, had been a selling point when she'd bought the house 5 years ago. The pristine pool, visible through the chain-link fence, had felt like living next to a postcard. Now it felt like living next to a circus. She marched to her bedroom window and yanked up the blinds. The Henderson house blazed with light. Cars lined the street and filled their driveway. Through their back patio doors, she could see moving, drinks being passed, chaos in full swing. "Mom," Emma's voice came from the doorway, small and tired. "I can't sleep." Rebecca's heart clenched. Her daughter stood there in pink pajamas, rubbing her eyes, looking so much younger than her 8 years. Emma had been struggling in school lately, falling asleep in class, her grades dropping. The teacher had called twice about Emma's exhaustion. "I know, baby, go back to bed. Mommy's going to fix this. You said that yesterday." The innocent words hit Rebecca like a slap. She'd been saying she'd fix it for weeks, but nothing had worked. The police had come out twice, but the parties always quieted down just long enough for the officers to leave. The Hendersons apologized profusely, promised it wouldn't happen again, then threw another party 2 nights later. Rebecca had tried everything legal. Tonight, she was going to try something else. She threw on jeans and a sweatshirt, kissed Emma's forehead, and headed for the front door. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the sound of young voices raised in celebration. She marched across her small front yard, past the property line, and straight to the Hendersons' front door. She hammered on it with her fist. The door opened, releasing a wave of beer smell and cigarette smoke. Kyle Henderson stood there, 22 years old, shirtless, holding a red Solo cup. His eyes were glassy, his grin sloppy. "Hey, Mrs. Martinez, want to join the party? Turn it down now. Come on, it's Friday night, live a little. Kids need to learn, the world doesn't revolve around them." Rebecca's vision went red. Turn it down, or what? Behind him, the music swelled. Someone had turned it up even more. Voices cheered from the backyard. To close the door. "Have a great night, Mrs. Martinez. Try some earplugs." The door shut in her face. Rebecca stood there for a moment, trembling with rage. Then she walked around to the back of the house. The backyard was packed with people. Most were Kyle's age, but she recognized a few older faces, including Tom Henderson, Kyle's father, who was supposed to be the responsible adult in this situation. He was laughing at something, a beer in his hand, clearly as drunk as his son. The music was deafening. Rebecca walked to the center of the patio and cupped her hands around her mouth. "Keep it down." Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. Conversations stopped. Faces turned toward her. The music still pounded, but for a moment, the human sound ceased. Then someone laughed. "Who's the crazy lady?" "That's Mrs. Martinez," Kyle called out from somewhere in the crowd. "She's our uptight neighbor. Ignore her." The conversations resumed. The laughter got louder. Someone turned the music up another notch. Rebecca felt something snap inside her chest. She'd been pushed too far for too long. She'd tried being reasonable. She'd tried being patient. The country club. The chain-link fence was only 4 feet high. Beyond it, the club's pool area was dark and empty, the water still and black under the moonlight. "Keep it down," she screamed again, her voice raw and desperate. "Keep it down, O.R.I.L." The threat died in her throat. Who didn't care about anyone but themselves? Tears of frustration burned her eyes. She'd failed Emma again. A car engine, revving high, tires squealing. The sound was getting closer, fast. People screamed and scattered like startled birds. The car hit the fence, the chain link exploded outward in a shower of metal and sparks. Driver inside, a young man, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth open in a scream that matched her own. Then the car crashed into the country club pool, with a sound like the world ending. Water erupted 20 feet into the air. The pool lights exploded in flashes of blue and white. The sedan's brake lights glowed red beneath the surface for a moment. Before flickering out, the music stopped. The laughter died. The only sounds were the settling water and someone's quiet sobbing. Rebecca stood at the edge of chaos, her heart hammering against her ribs, staring at the pool that had become a tomb. She'd screamed, "Keep it down." And somehow, impossibly, someone had kept it down forever. The police cars arrived like vultures, their red and blue lights painting the destruction in hellish colors. Rebecca Martinez stood frozen at the edge of the Hendersons' backyard, watching divers disappear into the murky pool water. The sedan sat at the bottom like a metallic coffin, its roof crumpled, windows spiderwebbed with cracks. Detective Sarah Chen approached through the chaos, her notebook already out. She was small and sharp-eyed, with the kind of controlled intensity that made suspects confess before they realized they were talking. "You're Rebecca Martinez." Chen's voice cut through the noise of radios and shouting officers. "Yes," Rebecca's voice came out as a whisper. "You live next door. You were here when it happened." It wasn't a question. Rebecca nodded anyway, her eyes still fixed on the pool. The divers had been down there for 20 minutes. She knew what that meant. Nobody could survive 20 minutes underwater. "I need you to tell me exactly what you saw." Rebecca blinked, finally looking at the detective. "I was asking them to turn down the music. Then I heard the car, and ... She gestured helplessly at the pool. The music was loud, deafening. It's been going on for months. I've called the police before, but nothing ever misses Martinez." Chen's voice sharpened. "I need you to focus. Start from the beginning. What time did you come outside?" The questions came in rapid-fire succession. Rebecca answered mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Somewhere in the crowd of partygoers, she could hear Kyle Henderson crying. His father was shouting at the paramedics, demanding to know why they weren't doing more. "The driver," Rebecca said suddenly. "Who was the driver?" Detective Chen studied her face. "Why do you ask?" "I saw him. Just for a second. When the car was in the air, he looked so young. His name was Marcus Webb, 21 years old, college student at State." Rebecca's knees nearly buckled. 21, just a year younger than Kyle. Someone's son, someone's brother, someone's future gone in an instant. "Do you know why he was driving so fast?" Chen continued. "Was he running from something? Someone? I don't know. I just heard the engine, and then ... Rebecca's voice trailed off. The memory played again in her mind. The car launching over. The fence, the driver's terrified face, the explosion of water. "Mrs. Martinez, I need to ask you directly, did you have any contact with Marcus Webb tonight? Any interaction at all?" "What? No. I'd never seen him before in my life." "But you were angry at the party, at the noise." Rebecca's spine stiffened. "Of course I was angry. I've been asking them to show some consideration for months. My daughter can't sleep. I can't sleep, but I didn't. I never wanted this to happen." Chen made a note. "The other witnesses say you were screaming at the partygoers just before the accident. I was telling them to keep it down. That's all, keep it down," Chen repeated, writing. "And then what happened?" "Then the car came. The detectives." Pen stopped moving. She looked up at Rebecca with sharp, measuring eyes. "Just like that. You told them to keep it down, and immediately afterward, a car crashes into their pool." Rebecca felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. It was a coincidence. That's quite a coincidence. Before Rebecca could respond, a commotion erupted near the pool. The divers had surfaced, and they were pulling someone from the water. Marcus Webb's body was limp, his skin pale blue in the harsh lights. The paramedics took over immediately, working with desperate efficiency, but Rebecca could see it was hopeless. The boy had been underwater too long. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered behind her. Rebecca turned to see Tom Henderson standing there, his face gray with shock. The drunken smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked like terror. "This is your fault," he said, pointing at Rebecca with a shaking finger. "You and your threats. You did this somehow." "That's enough," Detective Chen interrupted. "Mr. Henderson, I need you to know," Tom's voice cracked. "She's been harassing us for months. Tonight, she was screaming about keeping it down, making threats, and then this happens. That's not a coincidence." Other partygoers were gathering now, their faces pale but interested. Rebecca could see the wheels turning in their minds, the same terrible logic that Tom Henderson was following. "I didn't do anything," Rebecca said, but her voice sounded weak, even to her own ears. "You cursed us." Kyle Henderson appeared beside his father, his eyes wild with grief and shock. "You stood there and cursed us, and then Marcus died." "That's insane," Rebecca protested. "Cars crash. It happens. It's terrible, but it's not. Then why him?" Kyle's voice rose to a shriek. "Why tonight? Why right after you threatened us?" Detective Chen stepped between them. "Everyone needs to calm down. Mr. Henderson, I understand you're upset, but she killed him," Kyle screamed. "She killed Marcus." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Rebecca felt the weight of all those eyes on her, the partygoers, the police officers, the paramedics who had stopped their futile efforts over Marcus Webb's body. She could see the doubt in their faces, the terrible question, "What if?" "I'm going home," Rebecca said quietly. "My daughter is alone." She started to walk away, but Detective Chen's voice stopped her. "Mrs. Martinez, don't leave town. I'll have more questions." Rebecca nodded without turning around. She walked through the crowd, feeling their stares like brands on her skin. The whispers started before she reached the property line. "Did you see her face right after she yelled at them? ... My grandmother always said words have power ... Rebecca's house felt like a sanctuary when she finally got inside. Emma was asleep in her bed, finally getting the quiet she'd needed for so long. The irony wasn't lost on Rebecca. She'd wanted the noise to stop, and now it had permanently. She sat on her couch and stared at the wall. Through the window, she could see the emergency lights still flashing next door. The investigation would continue for hours, but she knew the real investigation was just beginning. The investigation into her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know what you did." Then, another murderer, and another, "You're going to pay." Rebecca turned off her phone and closed her eyes. She'd asked them to keep it down, and they had. But the silence that followed was more deafening than any noise they'd ever made. Outside, the sirens wailed on, but Rebecca knew they weren't coming to save her. They were coming to investigate her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrible thought was growing. What if Kyle Henderson was right? What if words really did have power? What if she really had killed Marcus Webb? By morning, Rebecca's face was on the news. The story had everything the media loved: a mysterious car crash, a dead college student, and a neighbor with a history of complaints. Channel 7's morning anchor, a blonde woman with predatory eyes, stood in front of the country club with a destroyed pool behind her. What neighbors are calling a bizarre tragedy that has left one young man dead and a community asking, was this really an accident? Rebecca watched from her kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands. Emma sat at the table eating cereal, oblivious to the storm building around them. The victim, 21-year-old Marcus Webb, was pronounced dead at the scene after his vehicle somehow launched over a fence and crashed into the Riverside Country Club pool. But what has residents talking isn't just the crash itself, it's the timing. The camera cut to a shaky cell phone video. Rebecca's stomach dropped as she recognized herself on screen, standing in the Hendersons' backyard, arms raised, mouth open in a scream. The audio was muffled, but her words were clear enough. "Keep it down." Witnesses say Rebecca Martinez, a local resident, had been arguing with partygoers moments before the fatal crash. Martinez, who had previously filed multiple noise complaints against her neighbors, was allegedly making threats when Webb's vehicle careened out of control. Mom Emma looked up from her cereal. "Why are they talking about you on TV?" Rebecca quickly shut off the television. "It's nothing, baby, just ... Some confusion about last night, but it wasn't nothing, and the confusion was spreading like wildfire." By the time Rebecca dropped Emma at school, she could feel the stares from other parents. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Whispers followed in her wake. At the diner, Her boss Jerry pulled her aside before her shift started. He was a kind man, had given her the job when she desperately needed it, but his face was troubled. "Becca, I need to ask. This thing on the news. It was an accident, Jerry. A terrible accident. I know, but corporate's been calling. Customers are, ... talking. Maybe you should take a few days off. Let things cool down. I need the money. Emma has school expenses and paid leave." Jerry said quickly, "Take the week. We'll figure it out." Rebecca wanted to argue, but she could see it in his eyes. This wasn't a suggestion. She gathered her purse and walked back to her car, feeling like she was floating outside her own life. Her phone rang as she reached the parking lot. "Unknown number. Hello, heavy breathing. Then, we know where you live." The line went dead. Rebecca's hands shook as she started the car. This was insane. She was being treated like a criminal for witnessing an accident. But even as she told herself that, doubt crept in. The timing had been incredible, impossible even. What were the odds? She drove to her second job at Henderson's Cleaning Services. Irony of the name had never struck her before. Mrs. Chen, the owner, was waiting in the parking lot, her face grim. "Rebecca, I'm sorry. I can't have you working for us right now." "What? Why?" "3 clients called this morning. They saw the news. They don't want you in their homes." Rebecca felt the world tilting. "Mrs. Chen, please. I need this job. I haven't done anything wrong. I know, but perception is everything in this business. I'm sorry. 2 jobs gone in one morning." Rebecca sat in her car outside the cleaning service, fighting back tears. How had this happened so fast? How had she gone from concerned neighbor to public enemy in 12 hours? Her phone buzzed, a text from Emma's school. "Please call regarding your daughter." Rebecca's blood turned to ice. She called immediately. "Mrs. Martinez, this is Principal Hawkins. I'm afraid there's been an incident with Emma today." "What kind of incident?" Some of her classmates have been saying things about what they saw on the news. Emma got upset and hit another child. "We're going to need you to come pick her up." Rebecca closed her eyes. It was happening to Emma, too. Her innocent little girl was being dragged into this nightmare. When she arrived at the school, Emma was sitting in the principal's office, her face streaked with tears. She ran to Rebecca as soon as she walked in. "They said, 'You killed someone, Mommy.' They said, 'You're a witch.' Oh, baby." Rebecca held her daughter tight, fury and heartbreak warring in her chest. "That's not true. None of that is true." Principal Hawkins, a woman Rebecca had always liked, looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Martinez, perhaps it would be best if Emma stayed home for a few days, until this ... situation ... calms down." Another exile, another door closed. They drove home in silence, Emma sniveling in the back seat. As they pulled into their driveway, Rebecca saw something that made her stomach lurch. Someone had spray-painted "murderer" across her garage door in red letters. The paint was still wet, dripping down like blood. "Mom?" Emma's voice was small. "Are we in trouble?" Before Rebecca could answer, Detective Chen's unmarked car pulled up behind them. The detective got out slowly, her face unreadable. "Mrs. Martinez, I need you to come to the station for some follow-up questions." "Am I under arrest?" "Not at this time, but we've uncovered some ... interesting information about Marcus Webb." Rebecca's heart pounded. What kind of information? Chen glanced at Emma, then back at Rebecca. "Can you arrange for someone to watch your daughter?" Rebecca called her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, the only person who still seemed willing to help. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in an interrogation room at the police station, facing Detective Chen across a metal table. "Marcus Webb was drunk," Chen said without preamble. "Blood alcohol of 0.15, but that's not the interesting part." She slid a photograph across the table. It showed Marcus Webb's car, but from a different angle. Rebecca could see damage to the front bumper and headlight that she hadn't noticed the night before. He'd been in an accident earlier that evening. Hit and run left the scene. Rebecca stared at the photo. "What does this have to do with me? The hit and run happened 6 blocks from your house. Marcus Webb hit a pedestrian and drove away. The victim is in intensive care. The room seemed to spin. You think I knew about this?" "I think," Chen said slowly, "that maybe Marcus Webb was running from more than just the alcohol in his system. Maybe he was running from guilt. And maybe, just maybe, when you screamed at that party about keeping it down, about consequences, it pushed him over the edge." Rebecca's mouth went dry. That's impossible, is it? You tell a room full of drunk kids to keep it down, and immediately afterward, the one person with something to hide crashes his car and dies. Sounds like karma to me. You can't be serious. Detective Chen leaned forward. What I'm serious about, Mrs. Martinez, is finding out exactly what happened in that backyard, because the more I learn about that night, the more questions I have, and they all seem to point back to you. Rebecca walked out of the police station 2 hours later, her head spinning. She wasn't officially a suspect, but she wasn't exactly cleared either. The investigation was expanding, and somehow, she was at the center of it all. As she drove home, one thought kept circling through her mind. Marcus Webb had been running from something. He'd hurt someone and fled. And when she'd screamed about justice, about consequences, he'd ended up dead. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly what everyone was saying it was. Karma. And that terrified her more than any accusation ever could. Rebecca hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Webb's face in that split second before the crash. Young, terrified, already dead, and just didn't know it yet. The media circus had only gotten worse. Protesters had gathered outside her house, some calling her a murderer, others claiming she was some kind of mystical force of justice. Both groups terrified her equally. She was making Emma breakfast when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw a woman she didn't recognize, middle-aged, brown hair streaked with gray eyes, red from crying. The woman held a photograph. Against her chest, like a shield, Rebecca opened the door cautiously, leaving the chain latched. "Are you Rebecca Martinez? Who's asking?" The woman held up the photograph. It showed Marcus Webb, but not the wild-eyed party boy from the news. Footage. This Marcus was younger, maybe 16, wearing a graduation cap and grinning at the camera with pure joy. "I'm Linda Webb. Marcus was my son." Rebecca's knees nearly buckled. "Mrs. Webb, I need to talk to you, please." Against every instinct, screaming at her to slam the door, Rebecca unlatched the chain and let Marcus Webb's mother into her home. Linda Webb moved like someone in a trance, her eyes taking in the modest living room. The child's drawings on the refrigerator, the normal life of a normal family. "I saw the news," Linda said, settling onto the couch. "Everyone's saying you cursed him, that you have some kind of power." "I don't," Rebecca said quickly. "I'm just a waitress, a mother. I was asking them to turn down their music, and then he wasn't supposed to be there." Linda's voice was flat, emotionless. "Marcus was supposed to be home that night. He told me he was staying in to study." Rebecca sat across from her, unsure what to say. In the kitchen, she could hear Emma quietly, eating her cereal, trying to pretend she wasn't listening. "You want to know what kind of person my son was?" Linda continued. "He tutored kids at the community center every Saturday. He sent me flowers on my birthday, even when he was broke. He cried when our dog died, even though he was 19 and thought crying wasn't cool." Each word hit Rebecca like a physical blow. This wasn't the entitled party boy she'd imagined. This was someone's beloved child. "Mrs. Webb, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I don't understand why, because I need to know if he suffered." Linda's composure finally cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I need to know if there was a reason. The police say he'd been drinking, that he hit someone earlier and drove away. That's not my Marcus. He wouldn't do that." Rebecca's stomach dropped. "Mrs. Webb, but if he did, if he really did hit someone and run, then maybe what happened to him was—" Linda struggled with the words. "Maybe it was justice. Maybe you really did call down some kind of cosmic punishment." "That's not how the world works," Rebecca said desperately. "Bad things happen to good people all the time. There's no cosmic justice, no karma. Sometimes there's just tragedy." Linda pulled out her phone and showed Rebecca a photo. "This is Meredith Santos. She's the woman Marcus allegedly hit, 73 years old, grandmother of 6. She was walking home from her night shift at the hospital when a car hit her and drove away." The photo showed an older Latina woman in scrubs, smiling at the camera. Her face was kind, her eyes warm. Rebecca could see the resemblance to her own mother, who had died 5 years earlier. "She's been in a coma since Saturday night," Linda continued. "The doctors say if she wakes up, she'll never walk again. Traumatic brain injury, shattered pelvis, internal bleeding." Rebecca stared at the photo, her mind reeling. "Mrs. Webb, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me the truth. When you screamed at that party, when you told them to keep it down, did you mean for something to happen? Did you somehow know Marcus was there? Did you call for justice?" "No." The word came out louder than Rebecca intended. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide with concern. "I was just angry about the noise. I didn't know Marcus existed. I certainly didn't know about any hit and run." Linda studied her face for a long moment. "But if you had known, if you'd known he'd hurt that grandmother and driven away, would you have wanted him to pay?" Rebecca opened her mouth to deny it, then stopped. The honest answer was yes. If she'd known Marcus Webb had hit an innocent woman and fled, leaving her to die in the street, she would have wanted him to face consequences. She would have wanted justice. "Everyone would," she said. Finally, "Then maybe that's enough." Linda stood up, clutching the photograph of her son. "Maybe wanting justice is enough to call it down. Maybe you don't have to know you're doing it, Mrs. Webb. That's not do you know what the last thing Marcus said to me was." Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "He called me Saturday afternoon, said he was worried about something, said he'd made a mistake and didn't know how to fix it. I told him to talk to me, but he said he had to go, had to think. If I'd pushed harder, if I'd made him tell me, maybe," she broke off, sobbing. Rebecca moved to comfort her, but Linda held up a hand. "I need to go see Meredith Santos. I need to face what my son did. But first, I need to ask you something." "What?" "If you really do have some kind of power, if you really can call down justice, then I want you to use it. For Meredith, she doesn't deserve what happened to her. If Marcus's death was payment for what he did, then let her live. Let her recover, balance the scales." "I don't have any power," Rebecca said desperately. "I'm nobody special." Linda smiled. "Sadly, nobody special. That's what makes it believable. God doesn't work through prophets anymore. He works through exhausted mothers who just want some peace and quiet." She walked to the door, then turned back. "There's something else you should know. The Hendersons are planning something. Kyle's been telling everyone you killed Marcus with some kind of curse. He's organizing people, saying you're dangerous. They're scared of you now. Scared of me? Terrified. And terrified people do terrible things." Linda's expression hardened. "Watch yourself, Mrs. Martinez, and watch your daughter. Because if people really believe you have power, they're going to want to stop you from using it again." After Linda left, Rebecca sat in her living room, staring at her hands. Normal hands, a waitress's hands, rough from work, scarred from small accidents, nothing special about them. But 3 people were in the hospital because of what those hands had done or what people thought they'd done. Her phone rang. Jerry from the diner. "Becca, I'm sorry. Corporate called again. They're letting you go. Permanently. Jerry, it's not me, it's the customers. They're scared to eat food you might have touched." "I'm sorry," the line went dead. Rebecca closed her eyes, feeling the walls closing in. No job, no money. And now the mother of the dead boy thought she was some kind of avenging angel. Outside, she could hear cars pulling up. Voices, footsteps on her driveway. She looked out the window and saw them. Kyle Henderson and a dozen other people. Some she recognized from the party, others she didn't. They carried signs, but these weren't the usual protest signs. These were threats, which, "Murderer, leave our town." Kyle stepped forward and cupped his hands around his mouth. "We know what you are," he shouted. "We know what you did, and we're not going to let you hurt anyone else." Rebecca pulled Emma away from the window just as the first rock hit their house. In the distance, thunder rumbled, though the sky had been clear moments before. Rebecca looked up at the darkening clouds and wondered, for the first time, if everyone might be right about her after all.